Brooks Running has a new shoe for you runners out there. Did you hear that? Better turn up your volume. In fact, turn it up to the max. Introducing the all-new Ghost Max. It's got all kinds of things to make your knees and ankles feel protected, like Max Cushion, Max Soft Landings with DNA Loft V2 foam, and Max Smooth Rides with their Glide Roll Rocker. Feel better on your run with Ghost Max. Learn more at brooksrunning.com.
Introducing Royal Caribbean's newest ship, Icon of the Seas, the ultimate family vacation. The ultimate 6 slides, 8 neighborhoods, 0 compromise vacation. The ultimate never done that, can't wait to do it vacation. The ultimate chillin' by a different pool every day of the week vacation. This is the Icon of Vacations. Icon of the Seas, arriving in 2024. Book today. Come seek the Royal Caribbean. Ships Registry, Bahamas.
Hello, and welcome to Scare You to Sleep. I'm Shelby, and I'm going to read you some true stories sent in by listeners. For those of you looking for more Scare You to Sleep content, remember you can join the Patreon and join the level to get an extra story every other week, plus ad-free episodes. Our first submission is from Serena Nix, who you may recognize as the author of episode 207, Devil of the Dark. Serena has an interesting addition to our Dark Reddit Third Man episode. Hello, Shelby. I'm listening to the Dark Reddit episode right now, and maybe this third man thing is the phenomenon that happened to me. I thought you might like my quick little account of my experience. When I was little, probably 8 or 9, my family took us to a water park / theme park sort of thing. It was so small compared to big name theme parks, but it was basically Disneyland to me as a kid. The water park had a wave pool, basically a giant pool that you would walk into like you're walking into the ocean. It just gradually gets deeper and deeper. Every so often, a horn would sound and waves would start. Then, a few minutes later, the horn sounded again and the waves would stop for a while. At the time, you could rent inflatable tubes or those blow-up rafts the size of a large beach towel. People would bring these inflatables into the pool and ride the waves. Now, looking back, I see how incredibly dangerous this was, because those of us without tubes would get stuck under the rafts. They don't allow those in the wave pool anymore. I was in the pool when the waves were off, and far enough in that I was on my tippy toes. The horn sounded and the waves started. With the waves, I couldn't touch the bottom anymore. Not a huge deal, I could swim, but all of a sudden, the rafts and tubes started going over my head. One after another after another. I remember being scared, but I couldn't do anything about it. I was small and just disappearing under these adults on inflatables. I was going to drown. All of a sudden, an arm shoots under the water and pulls me up. The weird part is that the person didn't say anything. They didn't try to take me to shore. They didn't really do anything. They just stood there, silently holding my arm. I was so embarrassed. I didn't say anything either, as we just stood there together in silence until the waves stopped. After that, he let me go without a word or any type of acknowledgement at all, and I went back to the shore. When I turned around, I didn't see him anywhere. I don't have a whole lot of memories from my childhood, but this one has always stuck with me, vividly. Now, as an adult with children of my own who have swam in this same pool, I think about how weird it was. If I would have rescued a drowning kid, I would have immediately talked to them, consoled them, at least asked them if they were okay. I don't believe in God or guardian angels or anything like that. But my whole life I felt like the man who saved me was somehow otherworldly. I don't know. The whole third man idea just sort of reminded me of this, and I figured you might think it's odd too. Thank you, Serena, for that story. That is really creepy. I used to go to a water park similar to this. It was called Oasis I think it was in like the Palm Springs area, and it had a wave pool, and I remember the inflatable rafts. In fact, I remember it had like a lazy river, and I think now you're not, or I don't think it's open anymore, but I remember they like had to put in a rule where you couldn't swim in the lazy river, you could only be in rafts. But I distinctly remember as a kid how dangerous it was to get out of your raft and try to swim around, because you would get stuck under adults, and that I can completely see this happening. And I'm so glad you're okay, and I'm so glad whoever that was there to pull you out that day. That's really eerie, and thank you so much again for sending that in. Oh, and if you missed the Dark Reddit episode she was referring to, it was the one previous to this, not the previous episode to this, but the previous Dark Reddit episode to this. I think it was Dark Reddit 11, I want to say. But I talked about the third man effect. So check that out. This next submission is from Jordan, and Jordan has quite a few scares to share with us. Hey Shelby, huge fan of the show. You're awesome, just wanted to tell you. I heard that you were taking real happenstance stories. I just wanted to state for the record that I truly do not believe in the things that have happened to me, because I am too afraid to open that door. But I have had truly weird things happen to me in my life. It never started with me being a child. I don't really have any memories of that. But what I do remember is 7 to 8 years ago, around when my father passed, is the first time I remember something weird happening to me. I went to sleep on June 23rd around 1 to 2 a.m., and I had a nightmare of my father texting me saying, "Help me, Jordan, I'm dying." And the next morning I wake up to my mother telling me that my father took his life the night before. That's one of a few weird occurrences. The next time was after my friends Sam and Travis and myself went to Target and bought some beer and a cheap Ouija board. We played and nothing came of it. Fast forward, I was asleep downstairs, and I don't know if I was lucid dreaming or what, but I heard footsteps running down my carpeted stairs towards the basement, and then bare feet running across the linoleum flooring near my bed, following up with a whisper in my ear saying my name. And I shot up straight in my bed out of a dead sleep and had to go back to bed with a nightlight on. The next time that something weird happened, my boyfriend at the time was over, sleeping downstairs with me. I had awoken in the middle of the night to run upstairs to the bathroom, and I heard men speaking while I was in the bathroom. Thinking it was my boyfriend and my stepdad or brother, I thought nothing of it and walked back down the stairs to find my boyfriend laying there asking me who I was talking to, while I was waiting to ask him the same fucking question. Sure, that was enough to be weird, but I still chose not to believe it was weird. The next time I was downstairs with my boyfriend again and was asleep for this encounter. So when I awoke, my boyfriend was in a protective stance over me. And I asked what had happened, and he said he heard someone running aggressively down the stairs without me telling him that I had experienced that before. So that was also rather scary, but still not wanting to believe it was real, I let it go. The last weird thing that happened to me before we moved out of that house was when I was downstairs in my room on the couch watching TV late at night. My bookshelf was behind my TV. My comics started to slip off the bookshelf onto the floor, and it scared me so badly, I had to go sleep on the floor of my brother's room. Still, I want to remain biased of these events because they're too scary for me to actually believe. Thank you so much, Jordan. I think the scariest one of these was when you heard, both you and your boyfriend heard those men talking. Reminds me of my own ghost story. And, just the idea. That's so creepy. Thank you so much for sharing so many of your creepy stories that are too scary for you to actually believe. Our next submission is from Aries. I'm a huge fan of your podcast, and I've been listening for a bit over 2 months now. I've always enjoyed being frightened, and your podcast is the perfect place to feel like that. I've dealt with paranormal stuff since I was a kid, especially when I lived with my grandma. She lived in an older house up on this hill in Northern California. Our neighborhood wasn't the best per se, and the house itself had 4 different living spaces. The pink paint was peeling pretty badly on the outside walls, and the stone stairs leading up to the main part of the house had vines overgrown onto it, in which my grandma lived in with my step-grandpa. My dad, stepmom, and I all lived in the small downstairs apartment. It had 2 bedrooms and a small bathroom, as well as a kitchen/living room. My room was the closest to the front door, which was mostly covered by the stone brick wall. There was a small pathway, but it hung under the balcony on my grandparents' part of the house. When we first moved in, I was around 7 or 8 years old, and the first couple of months were pretty normal. It wasn't until one night I awoke because of a noise. It wasn't necessarily abnormal because we had a cat, but as I sat up in bed and sleepily called my cat, I saw something in the living room that looked like a dark figure. I blinked and rubbed at my eyes, thinking I was just seeing something, and it went away. I then tried to go back to sleep, but I couldn't, and I heard another noise. This one, a creak of someone sitting on our old sofa. I covered my head with my blanket and shook. I heard more creaking, and our house was very old, so it wasn't unusual. Plus, we had night owls who lived in the apartment area above us to the right, while my grandparents' housing was in the left. After a while, I got back to sleep, but this wouldn't be the last time stuff like this would happen to me. A couple of weeks later, when I awoke to the noise again of creaking, I saw a shadow figure. It was thin and tall, the figure completely black, but slightly transparent. The thing walked back and forth for a couple of times as I laid in bed, frozen in fear. I had heard scary stories at school, especially about Bloody Mary, and I thought if I had moved or spoken, that I would be hurt or maybe worse. After about 5 minutes of it walking back and forth, it finally walked through the front door, it seemed. My room door was wide open, and you could clearly see the glass door as well as the window besides it. My body shook, and I remember running straight into my parents' room, crying as I woke them up. They calmed me down and chalked it down to my imagination, even though I insisted that I wasn't imagining. This happened 2 times after, before it became 2 figures I saw. All they did was walk back and forth, back and forth. I was constantly on edge because I couldn't sleep well, which then led me to having more health issues due to not sleeping that I already had being a sickly child. When we finally moved out of the house when I was 12, I no longer saw them, luckily. I don't think they were evil, but when I was a kid, I couldn't understand that. To be honest, I think that they were people who died in the house, but not even my grandma knew anything about the history of the house. I don't know if maybe I had some sort of sleep paralysis, but as far as I remember, I was able to move. I have a couple more true stories, which if you'd want to hear, I'd be glad to share. Thank you for taking the time to read my email, and hope you have a good rest of your day. Thank you so much, Aries, and I would love to hear more of your stories if you have any. That's really creepy. That was a big fear of mine growing up laying in bed. I was always convinced I was going to see a shadow walk across the hallway in front of my door. I wasn't allowed to have my door shut when I was asleep growing up. My mom had this fear of we had earthquakes, so I think she was afraid of the door getting jammed or just in an emergency not being able to hear if I cried or something. So my brother and I weren't allowed to have our doors shut, and I would just, the way my bed was I could see into the hallway, and I just every night convinced myself I was about to see a shadow person walk across my doorway. And the fact that it actually happened to you is so horrifying, and I'm so sorry you experienced that. But you did say now that you're an adult, you feel like they weren't evil, so I'm glad that you have come to terms with that. Thank you. Next, we have some odd glitches in the Matrix, I think. Listen and tell me what you think. These are from Rosie. I doubt this will ever see the light of day, but here goes. I'm not a firm believer in the paranormal. I usually try to figure out logical explanations behind the true horror on this show. But there are some things that I have to question. I have 2 stories. The first one took place in a moving vehicle a few months ago. I never eat fast food, and I never really want to all that bad. But my mom had offered to get me something from Dunkin' Donuts, and I jumped at the opportunity. She sent me in with some money, and I asked for a chocolate glazed donut. The guy said yes, and he was really nice. I was looking around the store, so I didn't see him put the donuts in the bag. He got my attention, and I took the bag and paid. When I got out to the car and looked in the bag, I saw that there were 2 donuts in there, though I had only ordered 1. I wasn't sure if you had to take at least 2 or if the guy was just being nice by giving me an extra one, but I went with it. I ate one of my donuts on the way home and saved the other one for later. It was in a white bag, and I hadn't looked at it too much. When I got back, I sat on the couch, took it out, took a bite, and put it back in the bag since I didn't have a plate. When I took it back out again, I saw another bite mark on the other side of the donut from where I had bitten from. I didn't know if this guy had taken a bite out of my donut before he put it in. I hope no one would do that. Why not just keep it for himself? I was a little creeped out, but I decided just to eat around the bite. To all the skeptics who are saying a hunk just fell off, I checked the bag. There were no donut hunks. I took another bite and put the donut back in the bag. This is where things got weird. When I took it back out again, there were 2 bite marks on the other side of my donut, where one had just been moments before. Nothing happened after that, but it still creeps me out. How did that bite get there? Okay, now this next story actually happened just about an hour before writing this. It's hard to find a logical explanation, but my house is one of few these days that is still heated by a fireplace. It is undoubtedly a superior way to heat one's home. It keeps your house warmer, and you pay way less than most alternatives. Earlier this night, I was about to go to bed, but I knew I had to start up the fire. If you put a lot of logs in, it'll last all night. So I got out one of the fire starter sticks. Now, it is important to tell you that these are not the normal kind. These sticks are very long rectangles that have ridges, so you can easily snap them off, like a chocolate bar. It was a 2x5 array. Onto the story. I took one of the full starter sticks and snapped 2 pieces off. I set them on the mantle and grabbed the lighter. I then removed them from the mantle and put them underneath the sticks in the fireplace. I set them on fire and closed the door. When I stood up, I went to put the lighter back on the mantle, and there, I saw 2 segments of the fire starter stick. Now, the ones that I had broken off were currently burning in the fireplace, so there's no chance that these were the same 2, but they were in the exact same spot that I had put the original 2. And I knew there were no other ones on the mantle when I set them there. I grabbed the large starter stick that I had taken the first 2 off of, and when I put the 2 pieces together up to the fire stick and compared them to the unbroken stick, they were the exact same length, and they fit together perfectly. These 2 pieces were from the exact same fire starter stick that I had just broken 2 pieces off of and put in the fire. I have no idea how they got there or what they were. I'm still creeped out by the whole thing. So, have you created that mood board yet? Started manifesting? I'm sure you have a couple of resolutions on your mind. Well, Factor's ready-to-eat meal delivery takes the stress out of meal planning and sets you up for success in the new year. Skip the grocery store's prep work and cooking fatigue. Instead, get chef-crafted, dietitian-approved meals delivered right to your door. With over 35 meals to choose from per week, including options like keto, calorie smart, vegan plus veggie, and more, plus over 55 weekly add-ons, you'll have a ton of nutritious and flavorful options to kickstart your resolutions. Forget frantic lunch preps and rushed dinners. Factor's 2-minute meals are your secret weapon in the new year. Fuel up fast with restaurant-quality meals, all delivered right to your door. Factor now offers loads of snack options like breakfast, smoothies, juices, snacks, and more to keep me going no matter what's on the schedule. Skip the overpriced takeout trap. Factor is cheaper and way more delicious than takeout. Get chef-crafted, restaurant-quality meals delivered right to your door. They're ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes, which means more time for you. Need a special occasion meal? Gourmet Plus is the perfect solution if you're looking for fast, upscale options done easily. When things get hectic, Factor is flexible. Change your order up every week with plans from 4 to 18 meals per week, or pause or reschedule your deliveries anytime. Head to factormeals.com/scareyoutosleep50 and use code scareyoutosleep50 to get 50% off. That's code scareyoutosleep50 at factormeals.com/scareyoutosleep50 to get 50% off.
Brooks Running has a new shoe for you runners out there. Did you hear that? Better turn up your volume. In fact, turn it up to the max. Introducing the all-new Ghost Max. It's got all kinds of things to make your knees and ankles feel protected, like Max Cushion, Max Soft Landings with DNA Loft V2 foam, and Max Smooth Rides with their Glide Roll Rocker. Feel better on your run with Ghost Max. Learn more at brooksrunning.com.
Thank you so much, Rosie. So, like I said in the beginning, are these glitches in the Matrix? They remind me a little bit of the Post-it note story. I am not saying that maybe you have a carbon monoxide problem. It couldn't hurt to check, of course. It's always better to be safe than sorry, but that's what these stories reminded me of. But they happened at such different points in your life. And the fire starter's weird. That's weird that it matched the stick. Like, I assume you put them together to see that the pieces matched up. I think that's what you said. And that's pretty bizarre. What do you all think? Let me know on social media what you think of Rosie's little glitches in the Matrix, which Rosie didn't call them. I just did, because that's these feel like they belong on that subreddit. So, all right, moving on. Next up, we have some stories from Logan. When I was 13 years old, me, my brother, and my mom lived with my mom's friend since she had a few extra bedrooms. My room was in the basement and wasn't completely finished. It had a cement floor, but drywall walls and ceiling. This room always creeped me out a bit, but nothing ever happened until one night. I woke up suddenly and felt like I couldn't move. The room was very cold compared to normal, and the TV had turned to static. I felt stuck there for a minute. Then, when I was able to get myself to get up, it felt like the temperature went back to normal, and the TV went back to Nick at Night, playing George Lopez like it normally did in the middle of the night in 2010 when this happened. I am not sure what this was, but I was absolutely terrified and slept on the couch the rest of the night. We moved out a few months later, and nothing else happened while we lived there. And another from Logan. I lived in an old house in Milwaukee while in college that was definitely haunted. My roommates and I had multiple encounters. The first thing that happened was in my roommate's room. We were in there together playing Call of Duty, and we had the window open. This was a window that had to be lifted up, and it was very tight and took some strength to open or close it. Out of nowhere, when we were playing our game, the window slammed shut with force. There was no way it could have shut on its own, but even if it could, it was way too hard of a slam for it to have fallen. We looked at each other with shocked faces, quit our game, and left the bedroom quickly. The next thing that happened really confirmed the house was haunted. I was lying in bed with my bedroom door open. I could see into our hallway and kitchen from my bedroom. The bathroom was also right across the hall. A very pale woman in an old Victorian-style dress walked out of the bathroom and into the kitchen. She got to the end of our kitchen, to the door to our back stairwell, and vanished through the door. I never felt threatened in the house, but it was definitely terrifying to witness those two events. My roommate had some other experiences as well, but these are the two that stick with me that I personally experienced. Thank you so much, Logan. I wonder if in that first story you were having some sleep paralysis. It kind of sounds like that, but it doesn't explain the static. But I know sometimes during sleep paralysis, some people see things like shadows and things. But I wonder if you were experiencing a bit of that. I don't know. That's so creepy. The Victorian woman walking past your door. I can't even begin with that. That is so scary. All right. This next submission is from Ray, who also has a few great stories for us. This has been last episode. The theme was Finland, and this episode is you guys having so many a lot of little stories, and this has been fun. So thank you. Hello, Shelby. I am a fan of your podcast, and it helps me get through cleaning my axolotl tank. I don't think I'd be able to survive without it, LOL. Anyway, I've reached out to tell you a few mysterious stories of my own. These all take place in Arizona, unless specified otherwise, and these are all personal, true stories. Take from them what you will. 1. The Pod. I was about 10 years old, staying at my friend Jay's house for a sleepover. She had a lovely backyard and absolutely gorgeous home, complete with farm animals and a pool. We had played games and did normal kid things all day, and eventually it was time for us to go to sleep. We ended up sleeping outside on Jay's trampoline since it was nice out. After hours of playing and jumping around, we took to stargazing, since you could actually see the stars at her house. We were nearly asleep when a flash of light caused both of us to sit straight up, staring at the sky. There was something there. It looked like the bottom of a jet ski if it were smoother and had LEDs coming from nowhere. It hovered, making no noise, not even shifting around slightly. Then, it was gone. Jay turned to look at me and asked if I saw it too. I did. We never told anyone because we thought people would call us crazy, but I guess I'm telling you now. 2. This one is from my grandma, about something my grandpa experienced. This was a while ago. I'm not sure how long ago or where this took place, so take it with a grain of salt. My grandpa was in the Air Force, working at a base where new planes were being experimented on. Eventually, during one of his long night shifts, a warning came from one of the higher-ups, one of the way higher-ups, to shut off all radars and anything that could be used to monitor nearby aircraft, and that once that was done, they were to wait for confirmation to turn it back on. My grandpa, seeing this as an opportunity to take a break, went outside to smoke. The tarmac had been shut down and no test flights were taking place. He smoked on the tarmac and heard roaring jet engines before he saw the planes, chasing a white pod. The pod dashed in a zigzag pattern, not moving at all between the zigzags, but seemingly teleporting or moving faster than my grandpa could see. The jets chased the pod, but it zipped into the sky before they could even get close. About an hour after that, they were all given the all clear to return to normal, with no explanation. Number 3. Mr. Nobody. When my family moved into our new house, next to my little sibling's school, it was a momentous occasion. The glamour of the new house eventually wore off, and we got to just normal living. Unfortunately, the house came with some kind of entity that the realtor neglected to tell us about. We call him Mr. Nobody. Things would go missing around the house, lights would be turned on, and things knocked over. My parents would ask me and my 2 younger siblings who did it, and none of us had. At one point, my father said something like, "Well, who is this Mr. Nobody doing these things?" And that's how he got his name. Backstory aside, one night I was watching a show with my mom, and my dad was probably out smoking. During an ad break, we saw something out of the corner of our eyes. A shadowy figure, hunched over, running from the hallway to hide behind the kitchen island. "Go tell your brothers to get in bed," my mom had told me. Except, it wasn't my brothers. I would have known because they were both really young at that point and couldn't have covered up the sound of them running at that speed. I told my mom this, and she said that she figured as much, and that it must just be Mr. Nobody paying us a visit. I decided to check behind the kitchen island anyway, and there was nothing there. No sign of any living creature. A few nights later, when I was pulling an all-nighter, my brother experienced sleep paralysis. I was playing games and saw the same shadowy figure watching me suck at Minecraft. I had no problem with Mr. Nobody. He was polite and a bit of a troublemaker, but he was not too much to deal with. Eventually, Mr. Nobody got bored of me and left to go bother someone else. I heard my brother sobbing within minutes. His door was wide open and he was still in bed. I asked him what was wrong, and all he could choke out was, "Mr. Nobody." After giving him water and letting him calm down, he told me all about his sleep paralysis. Mr. Nobody had opened the door to his room, but he was no longer shadowy. His face was made of shattered mirrors, and my brother saw Mr. Nobody through the mirrors, bloody and bruised. Reflective tears coating his face as he screeched, but no sounds came out, and all the noises pounded inside my brother's skull. We haven't seen much of Mr. Nobody since this happened. I think he's embarrassed. Thank you for reading. That's all for now. Those were all fantastic. I mean, 2 alien stories and a ghost story thrown at the end. Thank you so much, Ray. Those were terrifying. I'm very scared of aliens, so the alien ones really got me, or the UFO ones, and Mr. Nobody. Just watching you play Minecraft. That was great. All right, one last story of the night, my lovelies. And this is from Sebas. The Talking Shadow on the Wall. Hi, Shelby. I'm a huge fan of your podcast for years now. The first time I started listening to your podcast, I was alone in the kitchen making dinner, and literally I felt chills in my spine, that sensation that someone was watching me. That's when I knew that I loved this podcast. I apologize in advance for my English. I am from Ecuador, so Spanish is my main language. Well, let me tell you what happened to me when I was around 13 years old. I've always been fascinated by the supernatural, even when I was a child. I used to sneak out to my siblings' rooms to listen to their stories when they were trying to scare each other. However, as I grew older, I had more access to the internet and to information about this. I remember watching this movie called The Right with Anthony Hopkins, and was completely fascinated by the fact that people actually go and study demonology. So, curious as I am, I started my own research. I started reading stories and then watching videos, and then actually reading passages from books about Satanism, demonology, and the occult. I was fascinated by the fact that hell also has its own hierarchy and ranks among demons and creatures. I've always been reckless, so slowly I started to read into more obscure things and even practice a little bit. I never killed anything or tried to summon something. I was just fooling around. Something I forgot to mention is that I was raised Christian. To be more specific, I was raised LDS, but no longer practice. So one day I was chilling in my bed around 6 to 7 p.m. when I started to feel that something is watching. And when I told my mom, she only says to pray and wait. And so I did. This happened again at the same time on the next day, and again my mom said the same thing. Those 2 days, I started having issues sleeping. Like I was feeling uncomfortable, and like the temperature in my room was changing like crazy. I'll be freezing to death one second, and the next one, I'll feel like I was in an oven. On the third day, I felt really uneasy the whole day, like someone was chasing me the whole day. At school, I had to look over my shoulder a few times because I always felt that someone was watching. That afternoon, the same thing started to happen at 6 to 7 p.m., and I repeated the process, feeling really annoyed by it. At night, I had a very vivid dream, which I will tell just because it's important for context. I remember the dream like it was yesterday. In my dream, I was at church. Usually LDS churches in Ecuador are pretty white buildings with white, thick bar fences, meaning you can see outside. However, in my dream, the gates and the fences were black. I was in the parking lot, and my 3 dogs and my family, and suddenly the big black gate opened up and my dog ran through. I chased him because that sector is very well transited and a car could have killed my dog. But when I grabbed him, a full-on 6-wheel truck ran over me and killed me. But I woke up in another dream. I woke up in my living room in what it looked like it was midnight. My house at the moment was small, and if you sit in the middle of the couch on the living room where I woke up, you could clearly see my room's door. Anyways, when I woke up in the living room at what felt like it was midnight, there was a little bit of fog on the floor. Sitting on the couch, trying to understand WTF is happening, I saw the door from my room opening up and a shadow coming out of my room. I couldn't see who it was or what it was. The shadow man stepped outside, and in just a second, it pointed back to my door, like inviting me in. Then I woke up in a pool of my own sweat. At the next day, I woke up with an even bigger uneasy feeling. The rest of the day went by as usual. When I returned from school around 4 p.m., I went into my room, but as soon as I was walking down the hall to my room, my dog stopped and started barking super bad and loud at my door and at myself. I didn't pay attention to it because I was really fucking tired. And again, like all these past days, I felt like something was watching me. Without telling my mom, I went to my knees and started to pray. But I couldn't. I felt like time froze, like my tongue was being held by something. I then actually felt someone in the room, and I turned my head to see who was behind me, and I saw him, or it. A very tall shadow, like 7 feet tall, and he said a name, which until now I cannot repeat. I froze, and then I yelled with all my strength. My mom was in my room in less than a second and found me in shock. I couldn't talk. I just couldn't. My mom understood that something had happened to me, and she took me to the living room, in which I just said, "He said something. He said a name." She understood, and she just told me not to repeat what I had just heard. Our bishop came, and he made a prayer in my room. He called the other church authorities because he also felt uneasy going into my room. That night, I slept in my little sister's room, who, by the way, was above my room. Before going to bed, she said to me that she heard someone knock on her floor before I screamed. And that was it. I didn't sleep in my room for a month. I haven't seen a shadow again, nor have I dared to say the name it said to me. Thank you so much, Sebas. That was terrifying. And thank you for not saying the name, and thank you for not writing the name, so then I would have to say the name. because then I would be so scared and I would be so upset that I even had to read that. I'm so glad you're doing well and you have not seen any more terrifying shadow creatures. You didn't say, but are you still interested in demonology and things like that? I would assume maybe not. But anyway, thank you for sharing your horrific tales. Thank you to all of my submitters. Thank you, all of you, for sharing your scary tales with me. Thank you so much. If you have been listening and you have a true story you'd like to submit, you can send it to scareyoutosleep@gmail.com. Please put true story or true story submission, something along those lines, in the subject line so I know where to categorize it. And it doesn't have to be paranormal. It can be, something harrowing that you've gone through. Not all of them make it on the show, unfortunately, but yeah, feel free to send them to scareyoutosleep@gmail.com. And if you like the show and you like to follow along on social media, you can follow the show at scareyoutosleep on Twitter and Instagram. And there is a Facebook group that is a lot of fun. It's very active. You just search for Scare You to Sleep and answer the 2 questions. Feel free to just say podcast to the 2 questions and join the group. There's also a group chat, like a messenger chat for that group that's, I noticed is pretty active as well. I popped in the other day to say hello. And as I mentioned at the top of the show, you can find ad-free episodes on Patreon for as little as $1 a month and bonus episodes for $3 a month and up. However much you like to give. I understand money is tight these days for many, many people, and so please don't feel obligated, but I do like to have it there as an option. If you'd like to, some bonus episodes, or if you'd like to have some ad-free episodes. By the way, I have gotten all of the guided nightmares up on the Patreon, and I put them all in a collection. So, and I know the omnibuses are always an option, but sometimes, individual episodes, if you like to subscribe to Patreon and have individual episodes that are ad-free, they are now all available. There were a few that were missing because of, well, if you're on Patreon, you'll see why. I posted a little explanation for why some of those are missing, or were missing, and they're not anymore. So, okay, so now comes the end of the episode. Well, we were already really at the end, but here's the part where I talk a little about my week, usually just about baking, and soothe you to sleep, hopefully. Maybe comfort you after some of those scares, hopefully. Or maybe not. Maybe you like being scared. Maybe you like being scared to sleep, and that's why you're listening to Scare You to Sleep. It's all coming together. Yeah, okay. I'm tired. I have a funeral to go to tomorrow, and I did want to talk, though, about that cake that I mentioned last week. I mentioned that I might be making one of those French yogurt cakes that you see on TikTok, and my apologies to any French listeners who are like, this is not a TikTok recipe, this is a recipe that's been around forever. I understand. I'm so sorry. I found it on TikTok. That's what I mean. And it was, first of all, fantastic. Everyone was not kidding when they're like, this cake comes out so good every time. It was so good. I used the Oui yogurt as my container to use the yogurt plus measure, and I got the vanilla flavor. The recipes all said plain, but I knew I was gonna do vanilla flavoring anyway, so I got vanilla. And I also added an entire orange's worth of orange zest, plus a little vanilla extract. Oh my God. It was one of the best cakes I've ever made, ever. And it felt so good. Making a cake from scratch always feels good. I did it in a loaf pan. It turned out beautifully. I made a glaze with a little bit of powdered sugar and the juice from that orange and a little bit of the zest. I reserved a little bit of the zest. It really didn't even need a glaze, to be honest. It was fantastic. It was really a huge compliment when a few days later, and it was all gone, my dad was like, I really wish we had a piece of that cake you made the other day. It's like, wow, that's always a high compliment when someone is like, I wish we had one, that thing. And everybody loved it. It was really great. Well, everybody, me and my parents, we loved it. It was really, really good. I hope you try it out. I really do. It's, again, the base recipe is just vanilla, or the one that I read, because I did look up a recipe just in case, but it's a very easy recipe to remember once you've done it. And it said like vanilla or zest, and it said lemon zest, but I did vanilla and that orange zest, and it was just, I'm definitely making it again. It was so good. It was so good. So good. It was gone in 2 days. It was fantastic. Very moist, very, it takes a little longer to bake. Obviously, it's in a loaf pan. So if you've baked with loaf pans, usually those take a little while. But dang was it good. So highly recommend. Let's see, what else did I do this? Not anything I can share, unfortunately. Sorry, I've been so, I'm not trying to be mysterious these days. There's just a lot going on that I can't talk about. That's just how it is. How it is sometimes. But I will see you next week. I hope you have a fantastic weekend. Go bake a yogurt cake. You don't even have to use orange zest like I did. You can do lemon zest. You can leave out the zest if you're not a citrus person. Totally understandable. Throw in some vanilla. Throw in some chocolate chips. I don't know. Go crazy. I actually was thinking I'd love to try, because it's just, you know me, I've talked about this before on the show when I talk about baking. I love a good base recipe where it's like, okay, this is a great base, and now I can fiddle with it and do all kinds of things with it. Like, I think I want to do an almond cherry version with some like dried cherries and some almond extract. I think that would be fantastic. It's great. It's a great recipe to have in your repertoire. It's a good one to, maybe make a couple of them and give it out as gifts. Bring it over to a friend's house. If you're going to a dinner party or something. The glaze makes it beautiful. So yeah, I highly recommend it. Let me know if you make it. By the way, let me know if you've made it. There's also a Scare You to Eat group on Facebook if you'd like to join that and share your recipes. But yeah, email me, post it, tag me on social media, tag me on Instagram or whatever. If you make this cake, let me know. I'm so fascinated to see what you come up with. I love learning, seeing into all of your brains to see what you've come up with. Oh man, now I'm thinking of like a cinnamon version. The possibilities are endless. Go be crazy with this cake this weekend. Or don't. I'm not your dad. I can't tell you what to do. He can't either, really. Well, depending on how old you are, I guess. But, for the most part, I think, in my audience. I haven't looked at my analytics in a while, but I think most of you are over 18. I think. I'm out here telling children to rebel. I didn't mean to. I'm sorry. Sorry to your parents, but I'm not your dad, so I can't tell you what to do. But I would suggest to you, as a friendly aunt of some sort, as your fun friend, as, I don't know, whatever you see me as. What do you see me as? Whatever you see me as, whatever you think of me as. I recommend this cake. Now it's getting weird. It's getting weird. I'm gonna go. I love you. Remember to drink your water. Go get some sleep. Sweet dreams.
It was late in the afternoon when the professor and I took our way towards the east, whence I knew Jonathan was coming.
Jonathan Harker has asked me to note this, as he says he is hardly equal to the task, and he wants an exact record kept.
Dear Madam Mina, I have read your husband's so wonderful diary. Strange and terrible as it is true. I will pledge my life on it.
God preserve my sanity, for to this I am reduced. Safety and the assurance of safety are things of the past.
I am in hopes that I shall see more of you at Castle Dracula. Listen to Regarding Dracula wherever you listen to podcasts, or find us online at bloody.fm.